Is your family farm's future uncertain? Silence may be the biggest risk of all. Discover how open conversations and gradual planning can secure your legacy and empower the next generation. Don't wait. Start the dialogue today. Learn more and download a transition planning checklist at fcc.ca/knowledge.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Agronomic Monday, September 8th. I'm your host, Lyndsey Smith, and today's show brought to you by FMC Canada. So thank you so much to FMC. Check them out for all your weed control needs. And on that note, on today's show, you're going to hear from Deanna McLennan with FMC. She's going to break down why fall weed control, so this window we may or may not have in the fall, why it is so incredibly useful and important for certain weed species, why a fall pass can really set us up for excellent weed control next spring. So looking forward to that. It is also, I'll send a quick shout out, tonight's topic on the Agronomist, 8 p.m. Eastern. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, X, going live, 8 p.m. Eastern. Doctors Peter Sikkema and Charles Geddes are going to join me to talk about tough to kill weeds like kochia, like fleabane, and why fall weed control is a key part of that plan. So do join me tonight. It's going to be a great one. But also on today's show, super excited about the discussions we've got. Kelvin Hepner is going to join me twice. First, to talk, he's got a conversation with our Ag Minister, Heath MacDonald. He spoke to him Friday just after the federal announcements came out in support of canola and biofuel. So lots to unpack there. Then we've also got a discussion with Warren McCutcheon, a farmer from Manitoba, and Brady Olson, who's with Pickett Equipment, talking about getting every last bean. And these are kidney beans, edible beans, using Pickett Equipment. It's a pretty cool chat, and I highly recommend going to check out the video that accompanies it over on our YouTube channel. And then to round out the show, your favorite and mine, Christine O'Reilly, joins me to talk about how to manage a pasture or hayfield, whether it's alfalfa-based or grass-based, how to potentially manage it this fall to maybe make up for some of the stress of drought or overgrazing, but how to set it up for success in the spring. And there's a lot to talk about there. The conversation that you'll hear on today's show is actually somewhat pared down because we did touch on trying to get some oats or some very last minute sort of cover crop that might be able to be baled or grazed off, but we've pretty much missed that window unless we have just an unlikely event of like a super open warm fall. We've probably missed that window, but everything that's out there still might be worth grazing or making baleage out of, depending on how the season goes. All right, without further ado, let's take a quick break and I'll be back with more, brought to you by FMC Canada right after this.
Anniversaries are a time of reflection, celebration, and connection. 10 years ago, G3 set out with a vision to build something better for Canadian grain farmers. And you joined us on that journey to launch a new national network. Thank you for the relationships that made it possible. A decade of growth, a decade of connections, and more in decades to come. Connect with your farm business representative or find your closest elevator at g3smarter.ca.
Is your family farm's future uncertain? Silence might be the biggest risk of all. Discover how open conversations and gradual planning can secure your legacy and empower the next generation. Don't wait. Start the dialogue today. Learn more and download a transition planning checklist, your guide to farm succession planning, at fcc.ca/knowledge.
At Proven Seed, we know that farming in Western Canada doesn't just teach us, it shapes us. Here we face challenges with resilience, innovation, and grit born from decades of experience. We battle the conditions again and again because growing crops here isn't just what we do. It's who we are. We're raised to adapt just like you, with varieties grown specifically for your local conditions. Visit provenseed.ca/raised to adapt to hear our story.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, September 8th, and today's show brought to you by FMC Canada. We hop now to a very important conversation that my colleague Calvin Hepner managed to sit down with Federal Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald on Friday, just after the Prime Minister announced several different measures in support of Canada's canola and biofuel industries.
Prime Minister Mark Carney on Friday announced support for several sectors affected by tariffs, including agriculture, with Chinese tariffs still on Canadian canola, peas, pork, and seafood. And joining us here on Real Agriculture and RealAg Radio, we're now pleased to have Canada's Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Minister Heath MacDonald. Minister, thanks for taking the time to join us once again.
Thanks, Calvin. It's great to be here.
Can you fill us in on the decision? I guess several measures here that are relevant for agriculture. There's an increase to the interest-free portion of cash advances. There's new incentives for biodiesel production domestically, as well as increased investment in agri-marketing. Can you take us through the decision to implement these different policies and how you see them helping the canola sector through this time?
Well, I think they've been hit pretty hard with the Chinese tariffs. So we've been talking about this a little while and talking to farmers, obviously, talking to the canola associations and the ministers, obviously. So we felt that, timing, we need to do something. And it's a start, Calvin. It's not the end. It's a start to where we are right now at the present time. I've been in this job a little over 100 days and, up until the last month or so, no one wanted to talk about biofuels. And now we're talking about biofuels and we're looking to the future for them. So I was pretty happy with that decision and being able to be a part of it. So I know how important it is to the future of canola, and we want to make sure that we do everything possible domestically to enhance the market. So it's a good day. It's not the end, but it's a good day.
Can you provide any detail in terms of that incentive program, what it might look like? I know it's a 2-year timeline, and there's talk about amending the clean fuel regulations down the road. What type of changes is the government looking at making there?
Well, basically it has to go through NRCan and ECCC, and it's a 2-year biofuel production incentive to support renewable diesel and biodiesel. So it's a little over $370 million. And then following on that curtail, we'll do the amendment to the CFR to support domestic biofuel producers. The latter will take likely a little longer, and I'm not saying 2 years, but it'll take a few months just to make sure, because it's a legislative process that we have to go through. But we will ensure that we, consult with industry and sector, those involved, to make sure that everything is going in the appropriate direction. So we'll be able to do some technical presentations to industry, I hope, in the near future through NRCan and ECCC. But look, it's something that has been talked about for a number of years, and I think we're seeing a prime minister that's being pretty aggressive and wants an economic lens put on everything, and this is part of it, and he gets it.
Do you see domestic biofuel production, especially in the kind of the renewable diesel, biodiesel space, as a potential long-term demand driver for Canadian agriculture? In the past, we've maybe focused more on exports. The U.S. government has maybe focused more on biofuels than what we have in Canada. Do you see increased need for biofuels to be part of the Canadian agriculture demand picture?
I think, it's part of the agriculture value chain, and I think it will. And I think it's important that we diversify a little bit and, I guess, as the old saying is, control what you can control. So I think this is part of that process, and we need to do everything we can. if you want to have the fastest growing economy, as I said several times before, and I've said this to Sean and the G7, and this is what the Prime Minister wants, agriculture is going to have to play a significant part in that. And I believe today, and I'll say this to you, but the announcement was held in an aerospace building today in Mississauga with hundreds of people there, and front and center on the conversation was agriculture. And, at first I thought, why the heck are we announcing this in this facility? But the more I thought about it, Calvin, I said, this is exactly what agriculture needs, to be exposed to these individuals, to walk through a grocery store and pick, things off the shelves that expect it to be there. This is perfect. They get to see and hear front and center how important agriculture is to this country. So it was kind of an interesting day, but pretty rewarding at the end of it. And yes, I agree that domestically we need to do more.
Do you see the amendments to the clean fuel regulation putting more of an onus on driving domestic demand, not just on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, that there's a domestic production incentive built into it as well?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's, the amendments to the CFR are obviously to support the domestic biofuel producers and their feedstocks, and that includes canola. So, the amendments could target potentially fraudulent UCO. So I think this is all coming together, and I think, there's going to be more consultation, obviously, and technical reviews, but I think it's a real opportunity for us. And I think, at the end of the day, I think we're going to be better off for it.
Your colleague, Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Cody Blois, is headed to China along with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe here over the next few days. What are your expectations for this trip in terms of who they are going to meet with and what the outcomes could be from this delegation headed overseas?
Well, we need to keep a presence over there, and I think it's a good move on the Premier's part, and having us tag along, I don't think is ever going to hurt, because I think it's an opportunity to say that they have the federal government in tow as well. But it depends. Look, the Chinese government is layered in bureaucracy, and sometimes it's difficult to meet with the right individuals, and sometimes you may even be meeting with them and not realize it. So it's a convoluted, layered bureaucracy, but I think it's a good thing anytime that we can put a face in front of a Chinese official from Canada. So I think, the expectation, I have no idea. Mr. Moe may know more of that, but certainly I spoke to Mr. Moe last Friday, late Friday night, and we had a discussion about China, and it was positive. We're all rowing in the same direction. We're doing everything we can to help one another at the provincial level, the federal level, and it's dialogue, and it's trying to build that relationship, trying to find that interest that both countries have, and if we can maintain that contact and that dialogue, then hopefully at the end of the day it'll be beneficial to us.
All right. Well, they're overseas. You're going to be here in Manitoba hosting the annual FPT Ag Ministers meeting. What are your priorities for this meeting as you get together with your provincial and territorial colleagues?
Well, I think, we have regional differences across this country, and I know, trade has taken up a lot of time and energy, obviously, but we can't forget about the other sectors either. And I think we need to make sure that we stay focused not just on the trade tariff issues, but the other sectors that are competing for our time in that. So hearing from the ministers firsthand, that's usually what you get. It's their regions. And so I'm there to listen and hopefully thereafter act. And that's, part and parcel of what we're dealing with today. That's where that came from, a lot of it. From our last meeting we had in the summer, biofuels was a conversation that we had about. So, we're moving in the right direction. We're doing everything we can as fast as we can. There's further EV reviews going to be done by the government of Canada as well, which was announced today. There's a couple other programs that could be part of, agriculture. The Regional Tariff Response Initiative is it includes agriculture goods. It's a $450 million over 3 years and $1 billion over 5 years, non-repayable contributions. So then we have a strategic response fund, which is the SURF fund, which was basically, for steel, aluminum. Now we have agriculture, canola mentioned in that. So there's some good things come out of today's announcement, and we just have to, make sure we get the correct information to the right people to ensure that they understand it.
All right. I know you're running up against a deadline here, Minister. I want to quickly ask you, though, I know you were speaking on the phone with somebody else south of the border just before speaking with us here. Why don't you fill us in on that conversation?
Well, look, Alvin, it's, I had the opportunity to have a discussion with Secretary Rollins, and we touching base. We talk a little bit about trade and the importance of agriculture to both countries and how we're integrated. And, we had a good general conversation. It won't be the last for sure. But, things you have to maintain that communication. It's extremely important. And so we both agreed that we'll continue to do that.
All right. Is this the first time that you've connected with her?
No.
No? Okay. There have been other conversations? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time today, and looking forward to hopefully connecting with you and the other provincial ministers in Winnipeg.
Yes, that's right. And as Kelvin alludes to, the federal and provincial ag ministers are meeting this week in Winnipeg. This is the FPT meeting that was postponed from July. So this is the in-person meeting that was supposed to happen in Winnipeg in July, but the forest fires did delay it. And that is, of course, one of the reasons why Heath MacDonald is here at home, while Parliamentary Secretary Cody Blois is over in China with Premier Scott Moe. So as Minister MacDonald pointed out, definitely some federal, provincial cooperation happening on this file. Would love to get your thoughts on what you heard from the minister. You can zip me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or of course, you can call that feedback line 1-855-776-6147. We are going to take just a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to hear from Sean Haney in conversation with Deanna McLennan with FMC Canada with today's product spotlight targeting fall weeds. I adore fall weed control. Can't wait to hear all about it. All right, let's take a quick break, and I'll be back with more right after this. Protect your anhydrous ammonia application earlier than normal this fall. Defend against potential losses and protect your bottom line with new Centuro A-Pro Nitrogen Stabilizer. Patented active ingredient Pronitridine offers agronomically effective protection where it matters most, below ground. The new concentrated formulation lowers application rates. Start early with Centuro A-Pro as part of your nitrogen management plan. Contact your local retailer or visit centuro.ca for more information today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's time for a product spotlight with FMC. We're joined right now by Deanna McLennan. How's it going today, Deanna?
Going well.
Deanna, what do you do at FMC?
I am the technical sales manager for our Western Prairies region, so I support the sales team in Alberta and Northern Saskatchewan.
Oh, great stuff. Well, let's talk about why burn-off herbicides work. They work well in the fall for the most part. And why does FMC recommend controlling weeds in the fall versus waiting maybe till next spring?
We do recommend controlling weeds in the fall since it is the optimal time of year for control of perennial or winter annual weeds. And this is because once the temperatures start getting cool in the fall, the winter annual and perennial weeds start moving their nutrients down into their root systems. So a burn-off herbicide that has systemic activity will also move into the root systems with those nutrients and give us better control.
Yeah, so especially like on something like dandelions, for example, right?
Exactly. Some of those really challenging to control perennial weeds.
Yeah.
We just have a boost in efficacy when we target them in the fall.
Okay, so on that note, are there things that we can do to maximize that weed control in the fall?
Yes, we do have some tips and general recommendations for the fall burn-off applications. So we are always wanting to target the burn-off applications to weeds that are actively growing because we need them to be able to translocate the product. So we recommend applying burn-off products like Precision Pack 878 Pro during the late morning or early afternoon to maximize uptake and performance. And typically would target these applications on days where temperatures are above 10 degrees and the daytime highs are closer to 15.
So Deanna, you mentioned Precision Pack 878 Pro. I can remember doing Precision Pack videos, going back to the early days of Real Agriculture. What's 878?
Precision Pack 878 Pro is one of our newer burn-off blends available through the PPAC system. This blend contains 2 Group 2 herbicides, so it has tribenuron and metsulfuron, as well as dicamba, which is a Group 4, and we would intend for this blend to be mixed with glyphosate. So with all the actives in this blend, we do see excellent control of tough weeds like kochia, including Group 2 and Group 9 resistant biotypes, but we also get extended control, so approximately up to 15 days of flushing control for any germinating cleavers, volunteer canola, nearly poxbeard, and dandelion. So with all of these different components, this blend is an ideal fit for the black and dark brown soil zones, where flushing volunteer canola and overwintering cleavers are driver weeds, but also those zones are starting to think about managing kochia more as it moves north.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, especially the areas where it fits the best. Now, when we look at Precision Pack 878 Pro, what sets it apart from some of the other herbicides that are on the market today?
A lot of the customization and flexibility comes from the Precision Pack technology that FMC has. So DB878 Pro is one of just 30 blends that we have available, and each of our blends is tailored to different weeds, geographies, and crops. So any of the blends that come through Precision Pack are dispensed by the acre. So for DB878 Pro specifically, we can dispense a bag that holds between 50 to 160 acres worth of product. So this means you can match it to your sprayer size or the number of acres left to spray in the field, so you don't have to deal with any leftover product. And in general, the packaging is also a nice feature. We don't have bulky jugs or boxes to deal with, so it just reduces dealing with those containers after and minimizes waste.
Yeah.
And another nice feature of PPAC is it does help cut down on mixing time, since a blend like DB878 Pro, it's an all-in-one dry with multiple modes of action in that one bag. So mixing is pretty simple since you don't need to really add anything else besides glyphosate.
Oh man, there's a lot of advantages there. Okay, so in the past, FMC has run a fall program that gives back to the local community. How do farmers participate in that?
Yes, just to speak on FMC's Clean Fields Community Yields program for a second. It started in 2020 and again launching it again this fall. So in this program, FMC partners with local retails to support charities in their local areas. So the retail and the FMC account manager would work together to select a worthy organization, and then FMC would donate 10 cents per acre of all eligible herbicide sales made between July 15th and October 31st. And since launching this program back in 2020, FMC has now donated over $600,000 to over 270 different local charities across Western Canada.
Okay, so where can everybody learn more about Precision Pack 878 Pro or as well the FMC Clean Fields Community Program?
We would encourage farmers to reach out to their local retail for more information, but they can also call our customer service line at 1-833-362-7722 or visit our website at ag.fmc.com/ca.
Great stuff. Well, Deanna, thanks so much for joining us here today on RealAg Radio.
No problem. Thank you.
That is a product spotlight here today with our show sponsor, FMC. And we'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, fava beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
Back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Agronomic Monday. It is September 8th, and this show is brought to you by FMC Canada. So thank you very much to FMC and the team there. Great to hear from Deanna and learn all about fall weed control. Did want to send a shout out on that note. She mentioned some of those tough to kill weeds and why fall is such a great time to kill them. We are talking tonight on The Agronomist, Drs. Peter Sikkema and Charles Geddes going to join me to talk about fleabane and kochia. A few other ones as well, of course, with that kind of lineup, but we really are going to focus on layering these different management options we have, and fall weed control is definitely one of those key ones. But switching gears just a little for this segment, you're going to hear again from Calvin Heppner, and we've got Manitoba farmer Warren McCutcheon and Brady Olson with Pickett Equipment. They're going to talk about this really cool machine that leaves no bean behind when harvesting kidney beans. Let's hop to the Edible Bean School right now.
We're focusing on the final stage before harvest here on this episode of the Edible Beans School together with Hensel Co-op, and pleased to be joined by Warren McCutcheon, a farmer here near Carman, Manitoba. And Warren, when it comes to this last stage, some producers undercut. In some bean varieties, bean types, the option is there for direct harvest. Tell us about what you're doing in the field here today.
Today we're doing a Pickett one-step system. We've kind of done everything. We've done the straight cut, we've done knifing, windrowing, and we've kind of moved to this in certain conditions. We know it's not going to work all the time, but right now it's a little bit dry on top. It's nice and loose. And this system works fantastic in those conditions. We've got a bean that's kind of, it's really growthy. It's flopped over. There's pods on the ground. Just doesn't work great direct harvesting. So we find this is the best way to do it. And we kind of want to leave no bean behind, kind of is our motto in edibles here. Especially these light red kidneys are really valuable. And we're thinking we're getting almost everything here with this system. All right.
We're going to speak with Brady Olson of Pickett in just a moment, but why don't you tell us how this machine works, what the one-step does?
Yeah, no problem. So up front, we have a cutter up front on the front of the tractor just to cut around the tires. So we knife around the tires. I know Pickett has their own system as well, a factory system that you can use that more, it just directs them around the tires instead of cutting them. But this is the system that we used up front. And then in behind, when we come into here, it's basically two bars that go under the ground, and they're turning kind of at ground speed. And then it's pulling the beans up onto the pickup here. It's an 8-bar tooth pickup here, pulling them up and then onto the canvas, and then we're windrowing into 20-foot sections here. So we do 20 feet going one way, 20 feet coming back the other way, and then the combine will pick up 40 feet.
So when you're operating the tractor and in the field here, what are you paying attention to in the cab?
Well, first thing is to stay on the row. It's like anything, right? So this makes it a little bit easier. When we're just cutting and windrowing, you have to be very accurate. Our tolerance is very minimal on the knife. This one's a little bit better. We can set them back a little bit. It's not as important to do a great job of cutting because this is doing it for us, and there is a lot more wiggle room with the one step because the bars are going all the way across the machine. So when the bars are going all the way across the machine, your tolerance for driving is a little bit less. So that's a lot better on operator fatigue, and when we're working late nights, early mornings with this thing, that's a big deal for us. But then once we're going up and down the field, there's a few things that we really keep an eye on. One would just be consistent flow. Canvas will be the first thing that'll plug on us normally in a good crop. A poorer crop, you just kind of, speed is your limiting factor of how fast you can pick them up. But hopefully that's not a problem. This year, crop so far is good. We have fairly good amount of material there. So the first thing that we'll see is the canvas will plug if we're going too fast or we're overloading it. So everything just kind of wants to flow gently. We want to be able to have the bars running at a certain speed, our ground speed that's feeding it properly, and then the pickup feeding it, and then getting it off the canvas in a consistent fashion, because we want to be able to feed that combine with a consistent swath as well.
Of course, all these operations, depth is important as well, and I guess if you're too high, you're going to leave beans behind, and too low, you're going to get too much soil on the back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got adjustable depth wheels here, and you can tell right away. We try to run it as shallow as we can without leaving any beans. If we get a little bit too high, the bars will kind of run over top of the beans. You'll see it right away in behind, especially with a colored bean like this. We'll see it in the soil right away. You'll see the little red beans in the soil behind, and if we're missing some right away, we can make some adjustments and put it in a little bit. Certain land makes a big difference too. Like anything, harvesting, this field's a little bit more of a sandy loam kind of soil. Always makes it a little bit easier. We get into some more of a clay loam soil. You're pulling up a few more chunks. It pulls a little bit harder. We're getting a little more dirt on the roots. But out here, the one we're doing right now it's fairly simple.
How important is the hilling or ridging that happens during the growing season?
For sure, we found that the better hill we put on them with a row crop cultivator in season makes a big difference. Out here, just with our really dry conditions we had this year, we didn't want to touch these fields at all. We didn't want to dry them out any more than we had to. It was really hard. There's not a lot we could do with it. So we had a little window. Kind of the beans were maybe half filled a 30-inch row in, and we just went through. We went kind of 6-7 mile an hour as fast as we could and threw a hill at them. Just did it once, just enough to get us a hill that we could harvest. The bar runs right under the hill and cuts right into the beans. A lot better if we can put a hill on them.
All right. Finally, then, Warren, in terms of staging, how do you determine when to go and take this machine into the field here?
Yeah, it kind of depends whether we're doing a pre-harvest desiccant or not, or if the field's dried down naturally, or what the forecast looks like. This isn't a machine that you want to get a rain on right away, or even 3 or 4 days from now. Ideally, we do this step and then we can harvest them before we get any rain. By putting them in those tight windrows, they're fairly solid and they're 40 feet. They don't dry out very well, especially if we get into September in the shorter days and cool nights and things like that. It can be a battle. We've been caught before putting them in windrows and then having to move them again to try to dry them out. So this is one where we try to hold off as long as we can, maybe within 5 days of harvest, and then go in here one step these beans and then get them through the combine as soon as we can.
Thanks for your time and letting us visit the field here, Warren.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, from the field, we now head down to Burley, Idaho, the headquarters of Pickett Equipment, where we're joined by Brady Olson, the general manager of Pickett Equipment here on the Edible Bean School. And Brady, the first of all, thanks for joining us. The one-step machine has been around for a few years. Why don't you tell us a bit about the background, the thought that went into this design for this final stage before harvest in edible beans?
Yeah, Kelvin, thanks for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about the history of Pickett Equipment, something I'm passionate about. It started back into probably the 1970s. So a guy by the name of Steve Pickett. Many of you guys that are out there in the bean world are very aware of who Steve Pickett is. He and his father, they were working in the field, and they had the old, just an old rod weeder. And there were a couple other companies that had come up with just the conveyor concept with that. And in fact, there was a time when the rod weeder and the conveyor were two separate product lines from two different manufacturers. And what had happened is they gone through and they made the design to combine them all together. So that's where Steve and his dad took the idea. The concept was already there, and created their own product line that really just worked out really well that way. So they took the rod weeder, the pickup head, and the conveyor and combined it all into one. This was hit into the market, and it was marketed as a way of one man, one pass, kind of getting rid of the idea of going through the field with the old knife systems or whatever other methods that you had there, and then conveying them afterwards. So it was really a revolutionary thing for that day and age.
And certainly the gentleness that it handles the beans, that's one thing with bean harvest and prepping for harvest. That's always a key component of what we're trying to accomplish on the field is not causing any unnecessary damage to the beans, right?
Yep, absolutely. So the one step itself is designed to handle it with a lot of finesse. The pickup head is very unique in what it does, considering to like a hay head or something like that, where it has an action to the way that it picks it up. It'll pick it up from down low, and it can go slow, and then it has an action where it kind of pitches it at the very top to go over onto our conveyors or onto the rollers that then transfer it back. The other part about it is that it is all built on more of a skeletal type frame. Primary purpose for that is to allow for foreign objects, dirt especially, to sift through that entire time when we are pulling the beans from the field. Dirt is an enemy. We want to get that out as quick as possible. So,
Finally, then, Brady, any top tips for running this machine? We just heard from Warren as he walked us through what he's paying attention to while he's in the tractor cab in the field. Any tips for operating and maintaining and keeping a one step operating at in top condition?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest mistakes that I see out there is when we don't seem to be getting the cut or the pull that we think should be happening. The natural tendency is to speed up the rod. The rod is not a way of cutting. We're not cutting beans, right? That's a common terminology. But what we are doing is we're pulling beans. And the way that the rod weeder works is by utilizing the hard corners that are on that 1 1/4 inch rod. I know some of the older machines have a 1 inch on there. But with that going through the field at a slow pace, it allows for each corner to really just break up the soil and the roots to fall freely out of that plant. That's probably the number one thing there. Rod depth is also something that's there. You don't want to be too deep. You don't want to be too shallow. So it's really a game of fine tuning. And I guess that's my last piece of advice is that you make an adjustment and allow it to prove to you what has been done with your adjustment. Give it some time. Don't go back to the field to make another adjustment immediately. A lot of times you'll end up double crossing. You won't know where to start again.
All right. Thanks for your time today, Brady, and all the best with the edible bean harvest down there in Idaho and everybody else joining us, watching this edition of the Edible Bean School. All the best with harvest, whether you're cutting or pulling, if we want to be more correct in our terminology. Thank you, Brady.
I appreciate it, Kelvin. Thank you. Have a good day.
I should have said I come in the field when my Hensel guy tells me to.
Yeah.
That does make me laugh. I do love the outtakes. All right. Now, that, of course, as I mentioned, Edible Bean School. It is on our YouTube channel. Highly recommend. Go check out the visuals that go with this because I think, Warren and Brady both do an excellent job of explaining. But even if you're not an edible bean grower, this is a really cool machine and it's really cool to watch it working in the field. So head on over. We've got a Real Agriculture YouTube channel. We've got all of our farm progress show coverage on there as well. So some really cool equipment and machinery up there. And hey, while you're at it, you can give us a follow. Give us a subscribe while you're there. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here on today's show, brought to you by FMC Canada. And I'll be back with Christine O'Reilly talking about managing pastures and hay fields as you come out of a drought.
Season 4 of the Dirt Podcast is here, and we've got a lot to talk about. From soil fertility to market outlooks, Join me and a variety of industry experts as we dig into topics that will help you make better business decisions on your farm. This season, we're also introducing an Ask an Agronomist segment where we'll be answering some of your biggest questions and having some fun along the way. Listen to The Dirt on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or visit nutrient-economics.com.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for this Agronomic Monday, Lyndsey Smith. It is September 8th, and today's show brought to you by FMC Canada. Now we go to my conversation. This is just a part of it, so there is more if you want to head on over to RealAgriculture.com, but with Christine O'Reilly with OMAFA. Christine, welcome here.
Thanks for having me, Lyndsey.
We've had a pretty rough go in Ontario as far as rainfall, especially even for the area that you live in. And for many farmers in very specific areas, it has been a brutal drought. Some rains have returned. We could probably do a 7-part series on all the different ways that you can extend the grazing season, etc. But one of the other things, and we're doing this on our farm because we were very dry, we do typically graze our ram lambs we take third cut, sometimes fourth cut, depending on the year. We use our ram lambs to do that and to graze, but we are, and I'll admit it, in our critical harvest period. So we know this may bite us in the spring. And maybe you can explain why or what I'm preparing myself for mentally. First, let's talk about what is the critical harvest period. Is it just for alfalfa? And then we'll sort of take the conversation from there.
Yeah. So I don't, maybe I'm being pedantic, but I've always thought critical harvest period is a confusing name because it sounds like the time when you must harvest as opposed to the time when you really shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
So I've been trying to skew OMAFA resources to say fall rest period because I think that more accurately describes what we're trying to do. We're not the only people calling it that, but I'm just trying to skew our publications that way just because I think it more accurately describes what we're trying to do.
That's right.
So our perennial forage crops need some time in the fall to take all of the sugars they're producing photosynthesis and store them in their lower stems and roots so that they can use that energy to green up and grow in the spring. That's where they're getting the fuel to grow new leaves from the next year. So alfalfa has published dates for a fall rest period. That's based on research that was done. Basically, it's 450 growing degree days, that's base 5 Celsius, before the first killing frost. And for alfalfa, a killing frost is minus 4 degrees Celsius for at least 4 hours. Okay, so killing frost definition varies with plant species. Growing degree model varies with plant species, but for alfalfa, we've got a very solid handle on how much time alfalfa needs to do that regrowth to put enough energy in root reserves that it's going to come back strong in the spring. Typically, that 450 growing degree days takes about 6 weeks. So the average start date is what, for those of you who've seen the map, there's a map that OMAFA has published. So the dates on there are the average start date based on the average date of the first killing frost. Right. So it's not a perfect guide, but it gives you a good sense of, what might be typical in the part of the province where you're growing alfalfa. So that's the main one that we're thinking about. Bird's foot trefoil also has a well-defined fall rest period. It starts 10 days before alfalfa. Okay. So you can just look at the alfalfa and map and move the date up 10 days and you've got your trefoil date.
Okay.
We don't have published guidelines for the rest of our perennial forage species. And I suspect that's because historically they weren't valuable enough for anyone to bother. We can hammer a grass heavy mix or a grass clover mix, and it comes back the next year. And if you don't have enough yield, it'd be easy to go down the road and rent another 50 acres and you're fine. So for crops like that, we don't have published data, but that doesn't mean the biology is different. They still need some type of rest in the fall to harden off, to build root reserves, to really prepare for winter. So that's the why. Mm-hmm. That's the why. When it comes to a year like the one that we've had, and there are people that are struggling with forage inventory, I know that the agronomy is the first thing that goes out the window. So if you need the feed and there is enough worth cutting or enough worth grazing in that alfalfa hayfield, take it. But the thing I want you to think about is the plan that you should be making over the winter on what you're going to do that spring, because you've added extra stress to that crop if it doesn't have the energy to regrow. Because what happens is, like, if you were to cut in the middle of your fall rest period, so that's week 3, week 4, at that point, the plant has enough growing season left that it's taking energy out of storage to grow new leaves and stems, but it doesn't have enough time to use those new leaves to put energy back in the tank. So that's why the middle of the rest period is the riskiest for a winter kill problem. Right. If you were to cut at the very beginning or the very end, right, like that either has enough time to kind of go through that regrowth cycle and refill the tank, or it doesn't have enough time to start regrowing. And either of those are less risky than cutting right in the middle. That's actually one of the key things that I think that it can sometimes be hard to wrap your head around, in that I think it looks worse, right? In that you're grazing off so close to maybe a snowfall or freeze up or whatever. But if you think about the plant's actual biology, that plant had ample time to put root reserves, to put those, and it's not going to use that to try and regrow. They're still there for the spring. Yeah. Exactly. So Absolutely. That was, for me, I think that was like, or for us, was like a hard thing to sort of wrap our heads around. But it's like, no, that makes sense that if you are going to take that forage, actually waiting later, because then that plant is not in danger of trying to regrow this fall, it'll wait till spring. So, which is, I think, the key part. Yeah. So, and you mentioned, and again, and I think this is incredibly key, in a tough year where, maybe stored feed has already been fed out, or, to try and give your pastures a rest, or if maybe you didn't put up as much hay. I mean, thankfully, a lot of us got good first cut, even maybe second cut. But it's been since then that nothing has really, no rainfall, nothing's really regrown. I mean, it's still, though, like, we have to have a plan, recognizing that if we're cutting hay now or grazing it off this fall, and that wasn't the plan at the spring where we planned for this, we may need to address some of this in the spring. So what would be some of the things we should be planning for? Like, can we fix things with fertility? Do we need to reseed? Like, what would my list start to look like of, like, okay. Yeah. So if we're focusing on alfalfa for another minute or two, with alfalfa, your risk of winter kill has gone up. Now, it will depend a bit on the kind of winter we have. Do we have freeze thaw cycles? Does it ice? All of those other things, right? But yeah, I would say your early warning system in the spring, go scout that field at green up. If your plant count per square foot is below threshold, and the threshold changes with the age of the stand, because alfalfa crowns get larger and the stand thins as the crop gets older. So if your plants per square foot is below the economic thresholds, we've got these up on fieldcropnews.com. We've got them in publication 30, which is the guide to forage production. Then that's a stand that is not economically worth keeping. Right. So the plan should be to terminate that stand, rotate it into something else, because alfalfa is autotoxic. You can't establish alfalfa after alfalfa without serious hits to yield potential. Okay, because autotoxic allelopathic chemicals damage roots, even if germination happens. It's bad news bears. Right. So that's a technical term, everybody. Bad news bears. Very technical. So yeah, no, the plan would be, if the plant count is below threshold at green up, that's a field that needs to be terminated and rotated. Think about where you would put a new seeding of alfalfa somewhere else on the farm. Okay? Yeah. Once you've got 6 inches of growth in the spring, that's the time for a stem count. So the stem count correlates more closely to yield potential than the plant count. But the plant count is your early warning system. You've got more time in spring So you've got more options. Because maybe your plant count was it was kind of on the edge. Maybe it's kind of the low end of normal. You might be able to patch that, put some red clover, overseed with red clover, overseed with grass, right? Those are options that you could do early enough. By the time you've got 6 inches of growth, overseeding is going to be a little less successful because your new seedlings are now going to be competing for light and water with your established.
Right.
That's harder. So your 6 inches, you're looking at a stem count. So the minimum threshold, I think, is 55 stems per square foot. So these are, remember, an alfalfa crown sends up multiple stems, right?
It's stems. It's not plants.
It's a different count. It's stems, not plants.
Right. Yeah.
If it's below that threshold, you've already missed out on 25% of your yield potential, right? Like the maximum it could hit is 75. And this is before we stress it with, insects or diseases or multiple cuts in a year. Like this is coming out of the gate in the spring. You're only at 75% of yield potential. So if it's less than 55 stems per square foot, that's a sign that maybe after first cut, that field should be terminated and rotated into something else.
Right.
Anything that's grassy, in the fall especially, if you can give those pastures or hay fields a bit of a rest, that really helps. 50 pounds an acre of nitrogen will also encourage grasses to tiller in the fall. So that has to go on like early fall, so that they've got time to grow and tiller. But when we're talking about hay and pasture, leaves are yield, right? So having more tillers, especially to fill in any bare gaps that might have happened from that stress of really dry conditions, a little bit of nitrogen can go a long way to just help perk that back up. Assess in the spring. A little bit of nitrogen in the spring may help. That one's a judgment call because many farms have a hard time keeping up with the spring flush, particularly on a pasture as it is. So adding nitrogen to that makes that problem worse. So that one is not a universal, like the plants love it, but do you need the feed? So so that one's more of a judgment call. But in the fall, for sure, that helps thicken up a very grassy stand. The other one to think about is your other nutrients, right? Balanced nutrition helps any crop. The best bang for your buck on potassium is kind of the month up to 6 weeks before the fall rest period starts. So we've kind of closed in
Christine, that was forever ago.
on that moment right now. Not saying that it's not helpful.
Right. But that was a while ago.
Well, it depends where you are. The month to 6 weeks before the fall rest period, I know. If you were to put it on now, it's not going to hurt. But just the reason that it's suggested it goes on before the fall rest period is because potassium is used to regulate water in the plant. And it's part of that winter hardening process. So if it's on before the fall rest period starts, we know the plants have the nutrition they need to do all their winter prep. If it goes on now, it's not going to hurt. It just might not be the most optimum time. But it will still help, especially because we know these plants are stressed.
I'll be honest, Christine, I think that, and I am guilty of this as well, forage producers, if forage is much of what you do, or even if it's mixed and you have grain too, forages probably don't get nearly the fertility they're supposed to get. So even if we're a little late with the fertility, I think it's probably still okay. Because traditionally,
late is far better than never. I agree.
Never. Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. So that is very helpful. Okay. Let's leave it there. But as you mentioned, we've got some really great resources out there. And of course, producers can contact you as well. I encourage everyone, even if Christine isn't your provincial forage rep, contact your provincial forage rep, wherever you may be, and have these important conversations, not just for drought-stressed areas, but of course, if you're just trying to get a few extra years maybe, or a few extra cuts, or a few extra passes out of the pastures that you've got, they've got some great resources to access. And with that, we are done today's show. You're going to hear a lot from me this week. Sean's actually away at the end of the week, so I will be doing the Thursday Rapid Fire, which I'm very much looking forward to, and I'm hosting Friday's show. So looking forward to that as well. Big thank you, of course, to FMC Canada. Thank you all for making RealAg Radio a part of your day. We'll talk to you again. Cheers, everybody.